Hey, hi, hello, my name is Cleverly Jones and welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to discuss Killer Sally episode 2. Make sure to check out episode 1 if you missed it. Let's get started with episode 2. So episode 2 opens on New Year's Eve in 1990. So Sally and Ray have been married for 8 years at this point. Sally was hoping that their marriage would get better, but it still hadn't at this time. Sally stated that each time Ray got ready for competition, the steroid use would increase, and because of that, the beatings would also increase. Now, Sally had made up her mind that she wanted to leave Ray. She wanted to go back to her hometown of Allentown, Pennsylvania. So we get to the day that everything happens. This was February 14th, 1995. Now, Shantina talks about her mom trying to get in touch with Ray all day. Shantina remembers this vividly because it was Valentine's Day. Now, Sally thought Ray was down at the bar. Finally, Ray comes in the house and he comes in pretty late and him and Sally start to argue. Sally says that during the argument that Ray hit her. At this point, Sally is in fear of her life and thinks Ray is going to take her out. At this point, Sally grabbed the weapon and loaded it. She pointed it at Ray and asked him to leave. Now, Ray wouldn't leave, so Sally actually shot him. She shot him twice. After Sally shot him, she states that she covered Ray up and she handed the weapon over to a neighbor so that they knew that she was no longer a threat. Sally called 911. So we cut to a scene with John, Sally's son. He stated that it was actually a relief to him to find out that Ray had been shot. He stated it was a relief to him because he would no longer have to suffer abuse at the hands of Ray. Now, the police interview both of the children. The police also interview Sally, and Sally admits to feeling guilty during the interview. Sally was interviewed by the police for over 6 hours. During the police interview, Sally was informed that Ray didn't make it. At that point, Sally was placed under arrest. Sally states that she was in shock the whole time she was being interviewed by the police, and the kids were also in shock. The police did allow Sally to see her kids. They brought them into the interview room. Sally tries to comfort her children. Sally lets them know that they'll have to go to the shelter for a while before her mother or her sister can come pick them up. And you could tell during this time that Sally felt guilty. She was actually very apologetic to the children. We get to a scene where they show Shantina, and Shantina states that she blamed herself. She blamed herself because she thought she could do, a better job at breaking them up. However, she was a child at the time, so there was no way that she was at all responsible, and she wouldn't have been able to break up the fighting between her parents. Sally admits to this being the worst night of her life, and that's because of the impact that she had on her children and also the impact that she had on her life. So Children's Services took John and Shantina to a children's home. They went to a group home in San Diego, and during this time, Shantina says she felt unwanted, which any child would feel kind of abandoned. I mean, their father is dead and their mother is going to jail. This story quickly becomes a media frenzy. The local news gets a hold of it. Now, Sally was already convicted in the media. The media stated that she shot Ray, and not only did she shoot him once, she reloaded the gun and she shot him again. Now, the attorney that prosecuted Sally, his name was Dan Goldstein. Dan admits to being a tough prosecutor. Now, Dan is really full of himself and states that he was the top gun in the 90s. Dan states that he didn't see any remorse from Sally. And Dan was really appalled when Sally took a blanket that was provided to her by the police. She took the blanket and she laid on the police interview floor and took a nap. This was something that Dan didn't think an innocent person would do. He thought anybody who was innocent would be afraid for their lives and they wouldn't be so comfortable as to lay down in the middle, not in the middle of being interviewed, but to lay down during the police interview and take a nap. So the defense attorney for Sally was Bill Raphael. Bill had 15 years of criminal defense experience. Now, Bill admits that Sally wasn't the typical defendant, as she looked as though she could defend herself. And because of that, Bill informed Sally that he didn't want her to lift weights any longer. He wanted her to appear like a victim when she went before the judge. So he told her to stop lifting weights. He took out the shoulder pads out of her dress coats and any outfits that she may have. He wanted her to actually look like a victim. Now, Goldstein had requested that Sally's bail be put at $1 million. However, the defense was able to get it knocked down to $100,000. Bill states that Sally had a lot of supporters. Most of her supporters came from the guys that she used to wrestle during her wrestling videos. Those clients were able to help raise the bail money for Sally. Sally's parents took over custody of John and Shantina. John states that his grandparents used to be alcoholics. By the time they took custody of him and his sister Shantina, they were no longer alcoholics. They were in recovery. John talks about how the grandparents provided a loving household for him and Shantina. Now, Goldstein states the red herring of the trial was the fact that the steroid use would be an issue. Goldstein thought steroid use would be an issue because people could see it as Ray being fueled by the steroids and really going after Sally, or was it vice versa because Sally was also doing steroids? Was her rage fueled by the steroid use? So it can be attributed to both parties. Now, for the prosecution side, they asked Ray's friend DJ to testify on Ray's behalf. And DJ was actually for Ray. He didn't think the allegations lodged against Ray as far as him being an abuser were true. Now, all the people that interviewed for the trial, they thought that Sally was violent. Her Marine record also stated that she was very violent, that she was disrespectful, that she was argumentative. Her son, John, also admits that his mom was very argumentative and aggressive. Now, John talks about a schoolyard fight that he had where he beat up a little kid. Now, the kid's father ended up smacking John in the face. John talks about when he knew at that point when the guy smacked him in the face that the guy would be in trouble once he told Sally what happened. So when Sally finally gets home, John tells her what happens. Sally walks down there and beats on the guy's door, and she ends up beating up the father that attacked her son, which, I mean, that would be typical to me. If anybody hits your child, of course you're going to, attack them. I mean, I think that would be any parent's first instinct would be to attack someone that has tried to hurt their child. And we get to a scene where Sally actually admits to being violent and being aggressive, but she said she did this because of her home life, that she acted out because things with her and Ray weren't going well. John, Sally's son, also admits that his mom was very violent and aggressive towards Ray. So we get some more background on Ray. Ray's friend Shannon admits that Ray used to get around and sleep around with a lot of women. Shannon says that he knew that Sally could get violent and that Sally was not going for the affairs that Ray was having. Like, she wasn't going for it. So Bill Wick, who we were introduced to on episode 1, Bill admits to other times that Sally was being violent, particularly one time when Sally was violent during a weightlifting competition. Now, Sally admits to beating a woman during a competition because she was way too close to Ray. The lady was flirting with Ray, kind of in his face, and Sally wasn't going for that. Sally was very violent. She had gotten very violent with the lady. She ended up punching the lady in the face like she was a man, just hitting her with blows and telling her to stay away from Ray. So we cut to a scene where we get DJ, and DJ says that he doesn't think that Ray was in love with Sally as much as Sally was in love with Ray. He states that Ray was actually in love with another lady named Marianne. Ray had met Marianne at the gym where he worked out at. Now, Ray had told DJ that he saw his future with Marianne. Now, Sally was aware of Marianne. Sally states that she saw Marianne's number on a phone bill. She memorized the phone number, and she went across the street and called Marianne and threatened her and told Marianne not to, mess with Ray anymore and to no longer come to the gym where they used to all be at. However, Marianne states that her and Ray were in love with each other. And Ray actually spent Valentine's Day with Marianne. That's where he was at when Sally couldn't find him. Now, Ray told DJ that he wanted to leave Sally for Marianne. And he intended to tell Sally that night. And that night was Valentine's Day. Now, DJ stated that he warned Ray that he shouldn't do it, that he shouldn't tell Sally at the house, maybe meet in a public place to tell her. He knew that Sally had a temper. So he advised Ray that this wasn't the smartest thing to do. This wasn't a great decision. He also reminded Ray that, hey man, there's a weapon in the house. So again, you might want to find a public place to tell Sally that you no longer want to be with her. Now, during the police interview, Sally actually admitted to the cops that she knew about Marianne, Ray's girlfriend, and Sally also admitted to the cops that she wasn't going to put up with Ray's cheating ways any longer. Now, on the night of the incident, Sally says that she was getting dressed to go to McCabe's to spend time with Ray. She thought he was down at the bar. However, that's the night that Ray intended to tell Sally that he no longer wanted to be with her. So he asked his friend DJ to go over to the house just as a buffer and someone to be there. He figured that maybe Sally wouldn't get as emotional or as violent if he had someone there. So he asked DJ to meet him there at the house. DJ ended up arriving at the house before Ray. Now, DJ states he got a weird vibe from Sally. He said it was really weird. Sally was acting kind of funny. And she didn't want DJ to leave. DJ actually wanted to leave, go run and get him something to eat and then come back. But Sally didn't want him to leave. So he got a weird kind of vibe from her. Now, DJ ended up leaving to go get food. DJ stated by the time he got back to Sally's house that the police were already there talking to Sally and the kids were already outside, and he could tell the kids had been crying and were upset. Now, DJ actually blamed himself because he didn't stay. He feels like if he would have stayed instead of going to get food, that he actually could have prevented this from happening. Now, DJ states he was allowed to go into the house. Once he entered the apartment, he said that Ray's body material was everywhere. It was on the walls, it was on the ceilings, it was on the floor. He said it was a mess, basically a bloodbath in there. We cut to a scene where we get a snippet from DJ's wife. She states that she believes Sally was obsessed with Ray. The prosecutor thinks that the crime was premeditated. He believes that Sally knew that Ray was going to break up with her that night, and Sally already knew and admitted to that Ray was having an affair. Now, Sally states that it was not premeditated, that she had a very tough upbringing and all she knew how to do was to defend herself. So the documentary introduces us to Dobrosha. Dobrosha was Sally's childhood friend. Dobrosha states that Sally was her only friend. Her and her family were the first Black family to move into Sally's neighborhood. Dobrosha says that Sally never really spoke about the abuse that she suffered from in her home. She did say there was one story that always troubled her that Sally told her. Sally told her that her biological father actually kicked her mother in the stomach while her mother was pregnant with Sally. The mother was 8 months pregnant at the time when the father did this. However, Sally's biological father didn't stick around. Sally actually had a stepfather, and she felt that her stepfather didn't love her as much as he loved his biological children. Sally spoke about always wanting her parents' approval, and in order to do this, she became an athlete. Now, Sally states that she used to train with the boys. Sally was the only girl on her cross-country team, and she was the only one to qualify for the state competition. During that time, Sally states that she had a boyfriend, Victor, who was Black, but her parents disapproved of her dating Victor. So they talk more about Sally being a gifted diver, and she was an athletic star in her high school. After high school, Sally went to East Stroudsburg State. Sally stated how she loved college. However, she was forced to quit with one semester to go because she ran out of money. She asked her parents for the money, but they wouldn't, give it to her. So she had no choice but to quit. Once Sally quit college, she joined the Marines. Sally talks about meeting Shantina and John's father in the Marines. His name was Tony. Sally talks about how Tony was also abusive, but since Sally grew up like this, in her mind, she thought all relationships were like this. During the course of her marriage to Tony, she filed several police reports against Tony. Sally no longer wanted to be in an abusive relationship, so once she received orders to leave, she filed for divorce from Tony. Sally's orders were to go to Camp Pendleton. Sally moved to California, and in May of 1987, the divorce was final. However, just shortly thereafter, in June of 1987, Sally met Ray. So the episode ends with Sally stating that she had no choice but to hurt Ray. It was either her or him. Well, thanks for tuning into my review of Killer Sally episode 2. Please stay tuned for episode 3. If you like my review, please make sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. See you soon.